Hello, everyone, and welcome to Soul Stained Ink. My name is Beth, and I'm here today with yet another review of the books that I'm reading in grad school. So, this video, I want to talk about Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and then Notes on a Native Son by James Baldwin. Um, Invisible Man. Invisible Man is hard, and I just finished reading it. The audiobook was really good. I really enjoyed listening to the audiobook. However, there were a lot of parts in the story that I just don't really remember, and I don't know if it would have been better if I tried to read it physically. With my schedule and the two kids, it's very difficult for me to read physical books right now in the time span that we need to get them read. So audiobooks are a lifesaver, but I disconnected hardcore from this one. At the very beginning, I was okay. I was in there. And then as the book went along and the main character continued into his deep dive into invisibility, I just could not focus on it. So basically what we have is an unnamed narrator. And in the beginning, he is attending school at a Negro college, which is very heavily based off of the Tuskegee Institute, which was founded and run by Booker T. Washington. And he ends up taking one of the white trustees, driving him around campus, around the outskirts of campus, like he was asked to do. And the trustee talks to somebody, and there's a whole big discussion about incest. Um, yeah. And then the white trustee, whose name is Mr. Norton, has breakdown, and he ends up like having to take him to a bar that has prostitutes, and it's a black bar. And the trustee seems to be okay, but then when they get home, um, the narrator fetches the doctor and Mr. Bledsoe, who is the president of the college, and Mr. Bledsoe ends up deciding that our narrator has done something terrible, and then providing him with some letters so that he can go to New York and get a job and try to earn money to come back because he's lost his scholarship now. Um, but then when he gets to New York, he finds out that Dr. Bledsoe had absolutely no intention of allowing him to come back. And he just kind of continues to, he gets a job, he gets hurt, he forgets who he is. And then that second half of the novel, he's kind of refinding parts of himself, but discovering that he can be, or that he is, I guess, invisible. The only time he's visible is when other people are trying to get him to do things. So we have like this introduction prior to the book, this prologue, and then the second half of the book where he's talking about like, I used to be this law-abiding citizen who paid their bills, and I paid way too much money to the electric company and blah blah blah. But now I'm invisible, and like I can pop out of the shadows and mug somebody for calling me a name, and they don't know it was me if I'm careful. So I don't know. Parts of the book were interesting, but the vast majority of the book I just disconnected from, did not care much about. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was well written and it was a solid idea, but it was written in the, I believe, the 50s, and I'm not I'm not really sure what his end game was, other than showing that black men are invisible unless you are trying to make them do something. That was basically what I got out of the book. And living in 2020, not only did that make me very uncomfortable, the way he went about it, while most, if not all, of the actions were true to what would have happened back then, I definitely could not have dealt with it, if that makes sense. I just couldn't connect. Excuse me. It was all very disconcerting, which is probably the point. But other members of my class were like, oh my gosh, I got so much out of this. And I really didn't, which I think is an issue for another time. But following that, we read Notes on a Native Son by James Baldwin. And again, I very much enjoyed James Baldwin's writing style. I'm not quite finished with the book. But we read Native Son earlier. 2 books ago, maybe? Yeah. And I've already discussed it with you. So this is kind of the notes where James Baldwin is discussing being Black. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, it's a series of essays where James Baldwin is writing about cultural issues, the color divide. Most of them are really, really good. They are talking about American identities and who we are as a nation, who we are individually, who we are as the races. And I enjoyed them. We also read In My Dungeon Shook, which is a letter in essay format that he wrote to his nephew. Again, really well written. He has these amazing turns of phrase that I connected with way more than I connected with the novels. And he had some really valid points that are still very much discussion topics in 2020 about the way Black individuals are treated, about the racial divide, which at this point shouldn't exist, but definitely does. So I gave notes. Well, I haven't quite finished it, but I think I'm going to give Notes on a Native Son, or of a Native Son, a 4 out of 5 stars. You can tell I'm not quite sure how to talk about these. This series of essays connected with me more, or I connected with them more, and it's not really modern, but it's more modern, and I can understand it better. My research into the 30s and 40s, while I knew that there was, the red line district and color divide and all of that, it was not a hot topic in the research that I was doing, because I was researching like jazz musicians and things like that. And since there are both of the races in there, I knew that there were prejudices, a lot of them, but it never hit home how much it was until reading these books. So a slightly more modern read helped me understand more, I guess you could say. But those are my very feeble thoughts on Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison and Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. If you have read these, let me know what you thought, and I will talk to you again soon. I hope everybody's staying safe. Bye.